Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Still Standing Marriage After I Do. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you join us for this relational conversation, Marriage After I Do, Still Standing. And so we are here to talk about relationships, not just limited to the marriage relationship, but relationships of couples coming together and to deal with the challenges of relationships that have the opportunity, that actually raise up in relationships, challenges and things of that nature that happen in relationships. I'm very excited that you are able to join us for this time of Still Standing Marriage After I Do. And of course, I want to welcome our co-host, Shirley Beatty, my beautiful wife. I'm very thankful and grateful that she's able to join me for this conversation. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here on tonight. So hopefully we can kind of dig in and have good dialogue, and maybe some people that are listening in can kind of comment or ask your questions, or maybe even help us out. So hopefully
sure.
We can have some good dialogue on tonight.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. You can actually join us in the conversation through the chat. Join us through the chat, ask your questions, make your comments, what have you, and we will respond. As a matter of fact, when you come on, holler at us, let us know that you're on. And we will acknowledge you. We will acknowledge you. So, welcome to the conversation. Let's get into it. We are talking about this evening as it relates to the relationship, misalignment. When we're not on the same page, And really, we can hear that a lot. Couples are struggling and having relational, marital challenges. Sometimes we hear this statement that we're growing apart, or we've grown apart, and that speaks to a misalignment or not being on the same page. I would think that speaks to not being on the same page, or misalignment as it relates to the relationship. And so we want to deal with, as it relates to misalignment, not being on the same page, there are about three things that we want to bring to your attention that I believe will help us to navigate those times that we are not on the same page. One thing that we find ourselves dealing with or in misalignment concerning is communication. one thing that we sometimes are challenged with is communication. And if anyone is in a relationship or has been in a relationship or is in a relationship for any period of time, we know and understand that that communication is very important. It's very important. And so sometimes we're out of alignment in our communication. And we sometimes find ourselves in that place.
I think it is important that couples, you do have to learn. Uh, so I think with couples, you have to learn how each individual communicates. Not only like how like you might communicate differently than I communicate, but not only do you learn how each other communicate, but then we need to learn how to process what each individual is saying, like listening and processing what's being said. I think
Yes.
that is key because a lot of times we can communicate, we can say things, and we're not really hearing or listening or understanding what the um, other party is saying.
Yeah, and that's a good point that we have to understand how our spouse communicates. And I think that's very important. And not only how they communicate verbally, but I think there are a couple of modes of communication. One of them could be body language, that kind of thing. And so I think that we not only need to know how they communicate verbally, but also how they receive
Mhm,
communication.
mhm.
I think that's very important too for us to understand. I need to know or understand how my wife receives communication because um, communication is extremely important in the relationship.
That's so true. So I guess I can piggyback on that. So for myself, I'm very detail oriented. I want
Yes,
lots
you
of
are.
details. I want lots of information. So when we have a conversation, my husband can't just give me like a one liner, or he can't just talk to me and not give me some
Detail.
deep details about what we're discussing. So that's what we mean by, I guess, understanding how each individual, process information or what kind of information they need. So you can't just kind of just have like surface details, and the other party wants deep details, then that can kind of
Yeah.
mess with the communication aspect of the relationship also. So that's why I think we talk about understanding how people communicate and how people, process information.
Yeah, I think that well, I know that my wife loves a lot of detail. Me, I, I want details, but I don't, I don't want a boatload of details as my wife does. Right? I need enough to understand what she's trying to communicate, what she wants to communicate to me, and enough for me to understand and to be able to be knowledgeable and communicate back with her. So I think that I have learned, and the process of communication is ongoing. The process of learning how to communicate is ongoing. Ongoing. I mean, we've been married now for 40 years. 40 years in on the 16th, and I'm still learning. Right. The whole communication piece because there's always room for growth. There's always room for growth. And so the communication piece is very important for us as husband and wife. It's very important for us to be able, and it took me a while, because I think that I communicate the same way I receive communication. Does that make sense? I
Elaborate.
communicate. I communicate the same way that I receive communication. In that I don't I don't need as much information as my wife does. And so I don't always put out as much information as my wife does.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, correct. Mm-hmm.
So it's been a learning process. And in the relationship, understand this. It's always a learning process. We're always on that learning process. Of course, we've grown and we know, and things get better as it relates to the communication piece. But it takes work, it takes understanding, and it takes time and intentionality to be able to communicate on the same wavelength, I think.
Correct. And since I know and understand that after 40 years of marriage, so I know that I'm not going to get like a whole bunch of details. So I know and I understand that. So I know how to work within that realm so that it doesn't bother me, because I know that you're not going to give a whole bunch of detail unless I
give more details than I used to.
Unless I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I probably don't give as much as she wants, but I give more. I give more than I used to.
You do, yeah.
So communication is important, and so I think that that's something that when we talk about being not being on the same page, the challenge of communication so many times, if we can bring our communication into alignment, we can solve a lot of challenges, or when we're having conversation, we won't be as challenged to come to a place of agreement in whatever the discussion is concerning. So the communication piece is very important.
And also, tone of our voice in our communication. And I think that's something that is learned over the years of being in a relationship. Because if you're upset about something and you're communicating, you're toning your voice and how you're communicating, that can also affect your communication being received and understood and heard and processed.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That's really good because I know that I'm the person. I don't like to be yelled at. No, I don't like that. I feel like we can communicate without all of the extra yelling. And if my wife is not a yeller, but if my wife were, then I could literally tone her out. And that's what happens sometimes when we don't understand the tone that works for our wife or our husband. When we don't understand the tone that works, and we're trying, and sometimes, it can be an intense conversation. It can be an intense conversation, and so sometimes couples feel as though to get their point across, they feel like they need to raise their voice to do so.
Right.
But I don't believe that's necessary when we understand what kind of communication will actually help our spouse to hear, because the main thing that we want in communication is to be heard. And so for me, yelling is not going to help. It's not going to help my wife to be heard. And so I think that it's very important that we understand that not only what we communicate, but how we go about communicating it, I think is very important.
And in the same instance, you have the so everybody don't communicate the same way, don't have the same
Correct.
communication style. So some people may be very passionate about what they're trying to
Yes.
get across,
Mhm.
and I think it can be taken as being attacked, or this is an argument, or it could be taken the wrong way. So, but I think if people understand how others are, communicating their point, like if someone is passionate about what they are trying to convey, and it might come across as I feel like I'm being attacked or whatever. But
Mhm.
I think if you understand the other individual, then you know this person is passionate about what they're trying to convey, and I think sometimes that can be misunderstood.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree with that. I can agree with that. That there are people that sometimes passionate people, couples are passionate about what they're saying, and it can be consumed as being attacked. It
Correct.
can be taken that way. So yeah, I can understand that, and I can get with that. Um, yeah, that makes sense. And so I think that it's important that we understand not only what we communicate, but how we communicate to how you communicate to your spouse. How you say what you say is just important as what you say. And I think that sometimes we need to. I like to I like to think through what I'm going to say, and how I'm going to present what I'm going to say. And I think that's very important. And sometimes, if we take that route where we think through what we're going to say, understanding who your spouse is and how your spouse likes to be communicated to, I think that sometimes if we think about it, we can have a more meaningful conversation among ourselves. And in this situation, this whole thing is a growth process. It's a growth process where you may be a good communicator coming into the relationship.
Mhm.
You may be a good communicator. I may not be, right? So it's a growth process for both persons involved. It's a growth process. And so it's a learning curve that is definitely there. And so these are kind of some of the things that we need to think about when we're out of alignment in our communication. What you say, or how you say what you want to say, how you say is just as important as what you say. And so that's very important in the communication piece.
Okay, that's great. So, what would you tell um, a newlywed couple, or not so much if they're just newly married or in a relationship? What would you tell them as far as um, communicating, and when things feel like they have become misaligned? How would you kind of talk with them about, I guess, moving through that whole process so that they can kind of get into a good space in like the relationship.
Miscommunication brings in a certain amount of frustration, and it can be aggravating.
Mhm.
And so I would say in those times that, in our times of frustration and aggravation, that we not attempt to communicate in those moments,
Mhm.
that we take some time to pull back
Mhm.
and think about take I think it's necessary. I would tell them to take their spouse into consideration as it relates to how they're going to communicate. What is the point of the communication? What do they want to accomplish? Understand that, and then understand how to move forward to accomplish that. And sometimes that means pulling back and waiting for however long for situations to cool off, for the frustration or whatever, you know, might be, person might be feeling, whatever that is, take some time, pull back and come back to the conversation after. Don't just take up time off and go sit down and be mad, but pull back and think about think about how you want to say what you want to say and how you want to say it, and then reapproach the matter.
Okay, I think that's great. And I think that's definitely learned because most of the time in young marriages or young relationships, that's not how what we automatically think.
No, no, no,
I can
no.
think for my own self, that's not automatically how we process that. I think that's because of maturity,
Mm,
growth, and learning.
it
That's not
does.
something that because that's not something that we've been trained. Like in relationships, just coming together, just in like just trying to deal with relationship with people. So I think it comes with maturity, but it's very good that if we can do that, that would help a whole bunch.
Yeah, yeah. I think that yeah, it is definitely a growth thing. It's definitely a growth thing that sometimes we want to force the conversation.
Correct.
We should talk about this now. We should talk
Hmm.
about this now. And now might not be the time to do that. Right now may not be the greatest time to have the conversation because everything is kind of elevated, and is everyone in a position to hear?
Right.
Right? Is everyone in a position to hear? And so, and I want to highlight this before we move on. Um, as it relates to communication, when when we were young in marriage, um, you know, you kind of know, you if you don't, you'll learn when your spouse is bothered, right?
Hmm.
You'll learn. But when the question is asked, is there something wrong or what's wrong, that kind of thing, and you know that something is wrong, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing because that's not going to help the situation. If you don't want to talk about it, say, you can say, I am bothered by ABC, but I'm not in a place where I'm ready to talk about it right now.
I think, like I said, I think all of that comes with maturity in relationships where you can feel safe. Like I feel safe that I can tell my spouse how I'm feeling. Tell my spouse, this is not good or I'm not pleased with this. And I think that comes with uh, growth and maturity where you feel like I can talk to my spouse and I can let them know, I don't think this is good or I don't think this
Hmm.
is right or whatever and feel okay with expressing that because sometimes it may be that we feel threatened or intimidated about really expressing how we feel.
Well, that could be. That could be. And I think that everyone, both parties need to feel safe, feel like they're in a safe space to say what they need to say. And what I mean by safe is that it's not going to come back around in another conversation to um, uh, bring blame or bring it up in a negative way or something like that. So everyone needs to feel safe, um, to be able to have, because some of the conversations, sometimes communication, there's misalignment in communication because some of the conversations that we have to have in relationships can be hard.
Yes, yes,
They
that
can be
can be.
hard
Yes,
conversations,
yes.
and sometimes it's like the hard truths that have to be dealt with, that have to be dealt with. And so then I believe that it's very important for us to be in a space where we can have those conversations, and feel safe in having those hard conversations, because once you have them and you get past them, you can see how much better it will make the relationship.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
So another challenge in the marriage relationship, as it relates to being out of alignment, sometimes we're out of alignment in our priorities. Sometimes we're out of alignment in our priorities. We're going in two separate directions.
Mhm.
And that is a difficult place to be in. And that's another reason we have to have good communication,
Mhm.
because those things have to be communicated.
Right.
And so, if when you're raising children, when you're raising your family, and mom says, because young people are pretty smart, they're pretty bright, and so mom says no, they'll come to dad, and mom has already set the stage, and dad says something different, and then the child gets what they want, or maybe not when mom finds out. But not only is the child, the child has played the
Right.
two,
Mhm.
and then that what ends up happening is mom and dad have to have a conversation, right? Because we're not in the same place as it relates to priorities. And that's just a light example, but there's any number of areas in the marriage relationship where we have to be on the same page, as it relates to our priorities.
You got to set one of the things like set goals or sit down and have a conversation, talk about, um, and sometimes it might be intense conversations because one person may think, the priority may be one thing, and the other spouse may think
We
the
should do
priority is
something
something
else.
else. So you kind of have to have the discussion and come together on what's going to be best for the unit, the family, what's going to be
Yeah.
best. So, and I think sometimes you have to move self out the way, so you can't have selfish motives. You got to kind of have to look
True.
at like what's the goal and what's going to be best for the family.
Yeah, I think that's very important. What's going to be best for the family? What's going to be best for the relationship? I think I think you said something that I believe is important, and that's um, sitting down and setting goals to have the conversations. And again, some of those conversations can be hard because the thinking coming into the marriage relationship is different, because we come in sometimes it's different because we come from different backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
and our experiences were different. We saw our parents do things different ways. Your parents may have done things different from the way my parents did them. And so we come in with those experiences, but we have to come in with the understanding that we are together to build our own experience,
Correct.
to build
Very
our
good.
own experience.
Very
And
good.
so it does not have to be like the background that we've come from. We can take pieces from that if we can come into agreement on them, but we don't have to take pieces from our background, from our prior life experiences at home, and bring them into our own marriage relationship. We're here to build our own relationship. And I think that that's something that has to be considered and thought about,
That's
even when we're
good.
having the conversation.
That's good. Yeah, that we're not trying to be like our like what we saw in our families. Well, we can set our own what's going to be best for our relationship. Like we
Yes.
don't have to do like what like
Right.
what your mom and dad did, but we can establish what's best for our own relationship.
And listen, that's not even to say what mom and dad did was bad, but that's just to say it may not work for our relationship, right? And I think that especially if we can't come into agreement, on a thing, then we have to find a place of compromise. And so sometimes those conversations can be challenging. They can be a little difficult, but they are definitely doable. They're definitely doable. I can definitely testify to you on that, or we can, that they're definitely doable as it relates to, coming together on the goals and the direction that we want to go on the things that we want to do, and all those kinds of things. Um, so priorities coming in alignment and in agreement as it relates to our priorities, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and all those things are very important conversations to sit down and look at how everything continues to lead back to the conversation. So, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cannot set the goals without the conversation. You cannot come together without the conversation. The conversations are extremely important. Extremely important. And I think that sometimes we as men have to learn how to conversate, to be more, to be able to conversate more, right? I wasn't a big conversationalist, coming into the relationship. I didn't, I'll talk, but I'm not, that huge conversationalist like my wife is. So I had to learn and grow, for the betterment of the relationship. Now I do a lot more conversating now than I used to. Now my wife might say that a little bit different, but I'm just saying I have a lot more conversation, I believe, than I used to.
Yes, you're better.
Thank you.
You're better. You're better.
So I think that it's important because everything always leads back to the conversation. Everything always leads back to the conversation. So whenever we feel like things are getting out of alignment, if our conversation is out of alignment, then if we can't be on the same page with our conversation, then it's hard to get into alignment with everything else, because it all comes back to conversation. So our priorities, the only way to come into alignment on our priorities is to have conversations, to talk about it, to understand. We can't set goals. We can't set goals if we don't communicate. We can't make decisions if we don't communicate. So I think that's something very important. So establishing or coming into alignment on our priorities through communication is very important.
So one of my questions is, what if one of the parties, or one of, in the relationship, priorities is just can't, I guess, can't come to an agreement on the priorities? How would you, what advice would you give them, I guess, to kind of work through that? Like if one spouse or one individual is kind of so strong, have such strong, I guess, strong beliefs about the priorities over the other one, or you can't come to an agreement. How would you, what kind of advice would you give them, I guess, so that they can I guess, come to an agreement? Because sometimes that happens where you kind of discussed and each spouse thinks their priority, is top priority, and then trying to um, get them to come to a point where there's an agreement.
I think that's a better way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think that then we have to consider that I would say this. Now I'm going to be very mindful when I say this because we have to, or we should consider the order of the relationship. In the Christian household,
Mm-hmm.
the man is considered and the head of the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the man is head of the house. It's not that it's saying he rules his wife. His wife is in it with him. But if a decision cannot be made together, a decision must be made.
Mm-hmm.
So the husband has the opportunity to make that decision. But in making that decision, he also has the responsibility that if something goes wrong with that decision,
Mm-hmm.
he has the responsibility to make that right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so then, if there can't be an agreement, then the husband can make a decision, but in making the decision, he has to understand the responsibility in that decision if the two can't come into agreement. And if the decision goes off the rails, it's important that the wife understands that she should not come around and say, "I told you so."
I'm gonna be quiet on that.
No.
I think one of the things I wrote down is like, I think the whole concept of that is each individual must have respect for the other.
Yes.
So whatever is done
Absolutely.
should be done out of respect for your spouse.
Yes.
And what you know and understand about your spouse. So it should be done out of respect.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I don't think that, I don't think husbands should use that as a power grab to do what they want to do, to even take the path that they had suggested taking. I don't think that it should be like a power grab kind of situation where we believe we're getting our way.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't even be about that. Even in making those decisions, we must take our spouse into consideration, right? We must, right? It's not something that we do
Mm-hmm.
to feel like we're going to get our way. That's the wrong attitude, right? When we consider these things, it should be about taking our spouse into consideration. And even if we can't come into agreement, I still have to take my wife into consideration, her thoughts, her feelings, what she has communicated to me, right? That thing, right? Because it's true that if your wife ain't happy, if your wife is not happy or pleased, there's going to be some problems. So we should want our spouses to be pleased, to be satisfied, what have you. I should not make any decisions that I believe are going to grieve her, or to get back at her, or to show her, or anything like that. That's the wrong mindset to have. My mindset, because we're supposed to be one, just because we're one, it does not mean that we will always come into agreement, right? But we can respectfully disagree, can't we?
We can. Going back to what you asked earlier, I think is if we look at, we're in this relationship, but then we're also a team. So I think that to me, you should be able to work through situations where you can come to an agreement, what you think is best for um, the unit.
Yeah, I
As a
agree with that.
team. Yes.
I agree with that. But so if I believe because I don't know the time that we come into agreement.
I think if
40 years has been a long time.
you present your view, and you kind of not only present your view, or your viewpoint, but give some supporting data, like why you think it's good. Like that's legitimate, that makes sense. Then you can kind of weigh everybody's options.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I don't think we should cast each other off.
Right.
Shouldn't cast off the way you're feeling or what you're saying, and vice versa. And so I believe that 90% of the time we can come to agreement.
I think
I
so
really
too.
do. I don't remember a time where we haven't been able to come to agreement. So I believe that it is possible. It's possible for you to come into agreement. It takes work sometimes.
Yes.
It takes work sometimes, and you have to be willing to put in the work. Okay, so that's communication. We have we're not on the same page as it relates to communication. We're not on the same page as it relates to priorities. How about we're not on the same page as it relates to spirituality? How about that part?
That can be hard. You have to kind of tread lightly with that. That's very sensitive because you can come to the relationship and both of you all can be in the same place spiritually, and then one party can start growing over the other one. You just kind of have to know how to maneuver through that so that the person that is not growing or not in the same, that you're not in the same space, don't feel like they're being looked down upon, because I'm growing spiritually and you're not. So you kind of have to really know how to approach the individual and kind of be inclusive so they don't feel like they're in a different space.
Yeah, I believe that it's about it goes back to the mindset. It goes back to the mindset that we are one unit.
Yes.
We are one unit.
Yes.
If I leave, because sometimes we can be so spiritual till we don't understand that if I leave my wife behind spiritually, I'm failing in spirituality. Right? I'm not as spiritual as I think I am.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm thinking more of myself than I should. Right? And then even if my wife or if myself, if she is growing more than has grown more than me, or I have grown more than her, it's not up to me to browbeat her into growth, make her feel bad or guilty because she's not growing. My responsibility is to help her, and vice versa.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. If let's say I'm saved, but I'm not going to church as much as you, right? And then you come back home from church and you're all hyped, and your thing is to come back and tell me what pastor said. And you come back, you tell me what pastor said, and every Sunday you come home and you tell me what pastor said. And you go to Bible study, you come back and tell me what pastor said. And I'm getting tired of hearing you telling me what pastor said. So I think that's one part of it, but I think we have to learn how to give spiritually each other the grace that is needed,
Yes.
as it relates to helping one another to grow. Because when I think about the spectrum of growing spiritually, there are a lot of areas that come with that. And you might be spiritually stronger in certain areas than I am. It's not like I got it going on spiritually in every area of my life, but you might have greater growth in a certain area of your life that I have not yet experienced, or that I'm not experiencing. And so it's not for us to beat each other down with that, but to help each other to grow and to give one another the grace that is needed to help us to grow. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that we have to have grace and encourage each other.
Yes.
And like you said, and don't beat each other down when somebody don't want to do what you're doing, but just kind of encourage each other to continue to grow.
Yeah, and I think to help each other to understand and grow in what in your understanding, to help them to grow in their understanding. And so I think that's very important, spiritual growth, where I remember it wasn't that it certainly wasn't that I was all that spiritually, not even now, but I remember when God was dealing with me about the call into ministry, and I don't know if I'll let my wife tell you. I won't speak for her as it relates to how she was feeling when I was telling her, I believe God is calling me into the ministry. God is calling me into the ministry. And I didn't know what that looked like or what that was and all that. We found out, got the understanding, pastoring and all these kind of things. And I don't, Shirley can tell you how she felt about that, but I remember her saying, I didn't marry a pastor. I didn't marry a pastor. And I understood what she was saying. I wasn't bothered by it. I wasn't upset by it. I understood it clearly, what she was saying, because she didn't. She didn't see it coming. I certainly didn't see it coming. But yet, there we were. And so we have to help each other. That's my point. We must help each other. Now, she didn't try to stop me from moving forward. I don't think she understood where her place was as it relates to how she fitted into that picture. But the Lord has a way of working things out. I'll say that.
Yes, so that was definitely a Lord thing, working that out. Yes, but like I said, I think the important thing is to just give each other grace and pray for each other. That
Yes.
and
pray with each other.
and pray with each other, and that you will continue. You will start to grow spiritually together.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
It's about real marriage, real perseverance, and real faith. Talking about how couples can navigate marriage and relationships God's way.
They'll have special guests every episode, and it's not just for married couples.
It airs live every third Monday at 7 p.m. on Let's Talk Life and Worship.
You have the message, the expertise, the story. But producing a professional live or recorded show, that's where things can get overwhelming. Welcome to the Visibility Live Studio by T-Banks Creative. We help entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, and ministry leaders turn one intentional conversation into a professionally produced digital experience. You bring the message, we build the stage. Book your call today at tidycal.com/T-Banks Creative.
Well, welcome back. Listen, we're going to prepare to close out this show, but what I want to bring to your attention in closing is this. There are going to be times of misalignment, but they don't have to end with the relationship falling apart. I believe that overall, we must consider strongly choosing unity over being right. I believe that that's going to be very important, because sometimes in relationships, we want to be right fighters. We want to be right. And it's more important sometimes for us to be right than anything else. But for the relationship, for the oneness, for the coming together, for the moving together, as one unit, as one whole, to be able to do that, we must choose intentionally. We must choose intentionally unity over being right. And that starts with the conversations. This should be at the forefront of our mind. The whole unity thing, that should be the goal, that what I'm having this conversation for is to so that we can come out in unity, come out together, come out closer, and come out on the same page. And so I think that you must be intentional about choosing unity over being right.
And along with that, also honoring the marriage covenant.
Yes, very good point. Very good point. Because the covenant that we have made, we've made before the Lord, and we've made with one another. And today, the covenant, these days and times, the covenant is broken so easily. But we must be very intentional. When you're not feeling, I don't like my spouse that much today because of what she said or what he said. I'm not feeling the love. Remember the covenant. It is the covenant that holds the relationship together. It really is. And causes us to think. And so we have to be very intentional. Be very intentional about unity. Be very intentional about having conversations for the benefit of one another. In our relationship, I'll speak for Shirley and my relationship. In our relationship, for me, it's about her. And for her, it's about me. And so you look out for your husband. You look out for your wife. You hold her up. You hold him up. And the relationship will be held up. It will be held together. And you can walk through. You can walk through. Some things will be harder than others, but you can walk through and come out better on the other side. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No closing thoughts.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us for this time of Still Standing Marriage After I Do. Come on and join us again on next month, the month of September. The month of September. I didn't even look up the date, but it's going to be the third Monday in September. The third Monday in September, the 21st of September. Come on and join us again for Still Standing Marriage After I Do. Listen, you matter to God. You matter to us. Be intentional in your relationship about your spouse. You for your husband, you for your wife, and you will see an amazing change. Be intentional. Amen. We look forward to seeing you again. Still Standing Marriage After I Do on the 21st. Join us then. Until then, you live blessed.